After the demise of Li Wu, I took the chance to recuperate. Despite drinking the Green Dragon Crystal Potion earlier, the Xianxia sect prodigy had dealt me serious wounds after the effects had ended, that man and sword as one, particularly. If I didn't devise a scheme to kick Li Wu into the chamber with the 9,000 yen ice hell formation, I would have been killed by him. Unlike Zhu Jiao or other Xianxia protagonists, there was no way I could make a breakthrough in the middle of a fight or defeat Li Wu in direct combat. Such convenient things would never happen in reality. Fortunately, the head disciple of the Heavenly Fiend sect never imagined that I would make use of the icy death trap to kill him. He assumed I would be trying to destroy his spirit weapon with seismic step or other similar techniques and countered accordingly. That was close. I shuddered when I recalled the close shave when Li Wu sliced the air where he assumed my neck had been. A few centimeters lower, and he would have taken my head and a huge chunk of my chest off. If not with the physical weapon, then the sharp chi force emanating from it. I couldn't afford to let my guard down. From here on out, my enemies were only going to be tougher. I didn't know or care what realm or stages they were in, but I did know one thing. Anyone had the chance to beat anybody. It didn't matter what realm or stage they were in, or how much chi they had. Even though Li Wu was superior to me in strength, techniques, and chi, I defeated him because I outsmarted him and made use of my surroundings. Those battle-crazy martial artists who focused on cultivating their own skills and honing their techniques to perfection to become stronger than anyone else, often neglected tactics and intelligence. Of course, the writers of those Xianxia stories didn't have much of an imagination, and all their antagonists did stupid things, such as getting the whole sect to gang up on the protagonist, or attempt to assassinate or kill him for no reason other than because he offended them, or beat up their son or whatever. But this just allowed the protagonist to fight his way through them with brute force alone. No one actually thought to use tactics, intelligence, or schemes, or the simple-minded protagonists, and the authors were mostly simple-minded or unimaginative as well, benefited greatly from the antagonist's stupidity. Phew. I peeked inside to ensure that Li Wu and the other 14 elite Xianxia sect disciples were dead for certain, studying their frozen forms. Picking up my broken glasses and keeping them in my bag, I then took a deep breath, mustered my chi into a protective aura, and stepped inside the icy chamber. Of course, I wouldn't be able to withstand more than a few minutes inside the terrifying 9,000 yen ice hell formation, even with my nine-tailed frost fox formula, but it was more than enough time for me to enter, search for whatever I needed, and then get out before I froze to death inside. I had to be careful, though. I didn't want to die the ignoble death of being the first ice user to freeze to death. That would be the ultimate irony. That device looks like it'll be useful. I grabbed a small spirit artifact that was yin chi based, my senses picking up on the huge amount of yin chi it produced. On the surface, it resembled a high-tech globe, but it wasn't a smooth sphere. There were contraptions here and there, and what seemed like lights, dials, and buttons, but I had no idea what they did. For now, I just took it and stuffed it into my bag, intending to use it as part of the spirit materials for my eventual spirit armament. I also looked around for an appropriate elixir for Qing Tan. Given how we were assaulted right outside the vault with the elixirs, I doubted Zhu Jiao would be able to find the yin-based elixir he needed for his sister. I discovered an ultimate yin dragon saliva elixir and pocketed that too. Most likely that would be useful for Qing Tan and helped her curb her chill attacks completely. Or so I hoped, but I wasn't a doctor. I did read the label briefly and saw that it was perfect for a patient with the terminus demonic body, which was exactly the circumstances Qing Tan was suffering from, so I stuffed that in my bag as well and moved on. Brr! Unfortunately, time was up. I was already beginning to feel numb, and ice was growing over my limbs. My extremities, in particular, were beginning to be encased in thin blocks of ice. I had to hurry, or I would end up like Li Wu and the rest. As much as I wanted to profit from this encounter, I couldn't afford to linger for too long. I wasn't an idiot whose greed overcame common sense. Furthermore, it seemed that the time period that the 9,000 yen icy hell formation required to freeze me was beginning to shorten. Was I growing weaker, or was the formation growing stronger, adapting to my presence and overwhelming my defenses? Fuck. I had no choice but to get out right now. There went any plan of me to go in, grab stuff, go out and wait to recover, and then go in again. The 9,000 yen icy hell formation wasn't kind enough to allow me to exploit a loophole and make multiple trips to empty it of its contents. That was fine. I wasn't a greedy fellow who wanted to hoard every single treasure inside the frozen chamber. I had what I needed, and that was more than enough. While I hurried outside, I suddenly noticed something on my way out. A gleaming spirit artifact gleamed brightly amidst all the snow. It was a sword. I wasn't able to observe it much because of the cold and the urgency to get out of there before I froze to death. So I grabbed it without thinking, more drawn to it because of its icy chi and because I felt some sort of affinity with it, and hurried out of the chamber. The moment I was outside and warm again, I glanced at the beautifully sculpted sword that seemed as if it was almost crafted from ice. It was a deep azure color with an elegantly designed guard and hilt. The carousers etched onto the smooth, shiny blade seemed to pulse with power. Azure Lotus Sword. I breathed, instantly recognizing this as a spirit treasure weapon that was on par with the 8 spirit treasure weapons that I saw in the main hall, where everyone was fighting over. I couldn't believe my luck. Of course, it was not as good as the high-quality sword-type spirit treasure weapon that Xianxia obtained, nor did it have the same potential as the incomplete gauntlet-type spirit treasure weapon, heavenly golden draconic gauntlets, that Zhujiao got his hands on. But it meant that I wouldn't be leaving the ancient tomb empty-handed after all. Thank you so much. Exhaling a breath of relief and delight, I then kept my newly acquired sword inside my bag, closing my eyes and crouching down to wait for my frozen body to warm up a little before I continued on my journey. I rested. Crack! I jolted upright at the deafening noise. Turning my head toward the direction of the ominous sound, I saw that it was coming from inside the cave. The blizzard within seemed to have intensified, if possible, and the ice statues that were the 15 Xianxia sect disciples were cracking and shattering. I watched in shock as Li Shewu's frozen head snapped off his shoulders and crashed into the ground, rolling for a few moments before breaking into countless icy crystals. The rest of his body, as well as the other 14 elite disciples of the Heavenly Fiend sect, shared the same fate, crumbling to the vicious elements of the hellish formation. I was glad I got out of there when I did, and didn't try my luck with multiple trips. If I got caught by that, then even my resistance to ice and nine-tailed frost fox formula wouldn't be able to save me. Suppressing a shudder, I hastily hurried out of there, following the corridor in hopes of tracing the way Zhujiao went. At that moment, Zhujiao was looking for a way past the debris. Look, kid, you won't be able to get past all that rubble. We've to seek an alternative path. Qilin shook his head. And let's be honest, by the time you get there, you'll be too late. Either your friend survives and escapes, or he will already be dead. The only thing you can do is avenge him. For now, you should look for more treasures. But, who knows? You might be able to stumble across an elixir that will help him with his wounds, or you'll be able to find something to help with your cultivation. Right now, you don't have the strength to fight against those elite disciples, do you? No, Zhujiao admitted. Their low-ranking disciples are one thing, but those 15 elite disciples are on a completely different level. It would be one thing if I fight 3, maybe even 5 of them. But against 15, and while protecting Feiwu, impossible. Bloody hell, so the protagonist already took it for granted that I would be a burden and someone to be protected, rather than a comrade he can fight side by side with on equal terms. Typical. Were all Xianxia protagonists always this arrogant? Your goal is to raise your cultivation as quickly as possible, so that you can fight on par with an entire sect if necessary. Qilin told Zhujiao, who bought into that bullshit with a nod. Wait, what the fuck? Why did he need to fight on par with an entire sect? Was Qilin molding him to be the stereotypical Xianxia protagonist, who was always offending entire sects for one reason or another, who were so petty They would send out their entire might to exterminate him without hesitation. And Qilin, probably aware of Zhu Jiao being that sort of Xianxia protagonist, was already prepping him for a bloody future where he would eradicate entire sects who throw every single member at him to try and kill him? Seriously? Did he really have to go down that route of blood-fueled carnage? Of exterminating entire sects? Wasn't that so overdone and completely unrealistic? Unfortunately, Zhu Jiao saw nothing wrong with that absurd logic, and he nodded obediently. Where do you suggest we go now? The ghostly Qilin thought for a moment, floating in the air as he glanced around. Then he pointed at a specific pathway. Try that corridor. It seems to lead towards something that's absolutely brimming with dense qi. I can literally taste the rich power. Zhu Jiao glanced at his master, then spared the rubble with one last hesitant look. The noises of battle had faded, and he couldn't really sense the presence of anybody on the other side. With the lack of qi explosions and waves that came from executing martial arts techniques, it appeared that Qilin was right. I had successfully escaped, or the battle had already ended. Either way, there was nothing he could do.
So he nodded and took a deep breath, proceeding down the corridor. Asterix. In the direction that Zhu Jiao was heading toward, a black-clothed maiden had already arrived. Even though this was her first time exploring the ancient tomb, she seemed to be navigating her way through its labyrinthine corridors without any difficulty. She had managed to avoid the traps laid out in the corridor, using her qigong to bypass landmines or pitfalls, and wove her way toward the depths of the ancient tomb. Ignoring the majority of the paths, she focused on a single destination in mind, taking only a few turns and completely avoiding detours. Within a few minutes, she arrived in a vast karst cave. Stretching over 3 meters in height and over 10 meters across, it resembled some sort of cozy house. At the top, a gigantic stalactite hung from the ceiling, dwarfing any other structure residing within it. Underneath the stalactite was a relatively huge pool, probably the size of a swimming pool in a high school gymnasium. Stretching out in a few meters in radius, it resembled a small lake, its liquid milky. Drip, drip. The reason for its strange color was because of the white fluid that trickled down the length of the stalactite and dripped into the pool. The black-clothed maiden removed her clothing, becoming as naked as the day she was born, and revealing snow-white skin and long, slender legs. Wide hips, narrow waist, she had a gorgeous figure that most men would kill to steal a glimpse of. Storing her clothing in her bag, she then concealed it somewhere before diving into the pool. With a huge splash, she disappeared beneath the surface of the milky pool, completely submerging herself in its murky depths. Unfortunately for her, she didn't realize that the cavern in the ancient tomb was connected. Asterix. This way. Ah, there it is. Zhu Jiao blinked as he strolled into the karst cave, directed into it by the floating ghost of his master. What is this place? Hey kid, you're in luck. Look. Qilin pointed at the gigantic stalactite hanging from the ceiling. Zhu Jiao stared at it blankly for a few seconds, and then turned to his master for an explanation. The old ghost sighed. That's a milkstone. Milkstone? Zhu Jiao frowned. I thought only female mammals produce milk. Not that kind of milk, you fool. Qilin roared as he gestured wildly toward the stalactite. Zhu Jiao raised his head to look at it. At first glance, it was admittedly remarkable. A few meters in length, it hung suspended from the roof of the karst cave, like a final nail that was waiting to be driven into someone's coffin. Its base, which was connected to the ceiling, started out wide, but it began to thin as it drew closer toward the tip. And at that very tip, droplets of white fluid were trickling downward, falling lazily into the pool beneath it. Milkstones are the precious treasures of nature. Don't you know?
Qilin placed his hands on his hips. A century-old milkstone will have the effects of a medium-quality spirit pill that allows you to strengthen your body and qi. A millennium-old milkstone will be equivalent to a high-quality spirit pill, no even more than that. It nourishes your qi channels and strengthens them considerably, allowing you to both accelerate your cultivation of qi and strengthen your physical body significantly. It's one of the best naturally existing elixirs in the world. Wow! Even though he didn't quite understand most of it, Zhu Jiao comprehended just how amazing this milkstone was. Furthermore, he had hit quite a bottleneck in his training and was agonizing over the resources he needed to make a breakthrough. Personally, I would advise him not to rely on these weird spirit pills and potions because it sounded dubious to me, and we all knew how harmful doping and relying on steroids were. Unfortunately, at that time, I wasn't around to advise him. In any case, Zhu Jiao and Qi Lin didn't expect to find a milkstone hidden in the depths of this ancient tomb. Perhaps it was transplanted here by the nascent soul stage practitioner, or perhaps it came into existence long after the tomb was manufactured. Either way, this was practically a fortuitous encounter for the Xianxia protagonist. Yeah, the bastard always got all the lucky breaks at the times when he needed them. How super convenient. Judging from the size of the stalactite, that milkstone must have been here for over 1,000 years. You're in luck, my boy. Heh. Zhu Jiao couldn't help but bend down and test what his master told him. Using his index finger, he scooped up a drop of milkstone fluid and placed it in his mouth, closing his eyes and savoring it for a few seconds. Then he opened his eyes, widening them in awe. He could feel the milkstone liquid blending into his mouth and began spreading across his body instantly, nourishing his flesh and bones. He was almost taken aback by the sheer potency of the white fluid. The medicinal effect of this milkstone fluid is far beyond that of even a high-quality spirit pill. Well, a normal, artificial spirit pill will certainly have longer medicinal effects, Qi Lin admitted. But I assure you, this milkstone fluid's potency is vastly superior. Go on, try bathing in it and cultivating. You'll see what I mean. Zhu Jiao accepted his master's encouragement and showed no hesitation in shedding all of his clothes from his well-toned and muscular body. Qi Lin turned away, not having any interest in watching a naked male body, but Zhu Jiao paid him no attention and immediately dove into the milkstone pool with a splash. Whew! This feels great! Leaning back, Zhu Jiao let out a satisfied sigh, almost like an old man enjoying a bath in an onsen. He felt as if he was soaking in refreshing qi currents, which entered his body in all shapes and methods, gradually altering his body bit by bit. Zhu Jiao savored the magnificent sensation, feeling much better than he ever had in his life. Oi, don't just enjoy your bath. Have you forgotten what you've come to do? Qi Lin chided him impatiently. Zhu Jiao's eyes flew open. Oh, right. At his master's reminder, he began to quickly execute his Golden Kirin sacred body formula, circulating his blood and qi to strengthen himself. While this cultivation technique necessitated the expenditure of vast amounts of blood and qi, which would drain the cultivator dry if he didn't have the appropriate support in the form of spirit medicine and other cultivation resources. Thanks to that crippling weakness, Zhu Jiao's progress on the Golden Kirin sacred body formula had somewhat stalled once he had achieved the man and sword as one last year. Fortunately, with the milkstone fluid providing him nourishment, he could abuse it and cultivated it as much as he wanted. As time passed, his muscles thickened, grew denser, and became stronger and tougher. But the structure that benefited the most was his skeleton. Obviously, I wasn't familiar with the details of the martial arts techniques that Zhu Jiao used, and I had no intention of dropping an info dump right on the readers. But apparently, one of Zhu Jiao's problems was that his techniques didn't help him strengthen his skeleton enough. But Qi Lin viewed the skeleton as the foundation for one's physical strength, and thus emphasized this point to his disciple, especially the dangers of the skeleton fracturing if it was unable to withstand his techniques when he overexerted during training or a fight. Qi Lin watched, satisfied, as the white substance in the milkstone pool began to gather around Zhu Jiao, strengthening his life force. Evidently, at this rate, Zhu Jiao might achieve a breakthrough and reach a new level in his cultivation. Unfortunately, the master and disciple pair were completely unaware of the maiden seated 10 meters away, right under Zhu Jiao. I wasn't going to waste words describing her beauty. You guys have read tons of Xianxia novels, I hope, so you know the drill by now. Suffice to say, her beauty was not inferior to that of Bai Ning Xui's, who was the #1 beauty in Wuling Academy. Despite her pristine beauty and exquisite features, the maiden was emanating an ominous black light from her naked body, which melded with traces of white light, basically yin and yang and all that bullshit. Again, I ain't wasting words explaining all these mumbo-jumbo. Suffice to say, the lights gave her a half angelic and half demonic quality, if there was anyone to see her. Well, I guess the readers beyond the fourth wall counted. So fan service for you guys. As Qilin told Zhu Jiao, a Millennial Milkstone had the effects of a high-quality spirit pill. No, it was beyond even that and was probably a divine spirit pill, as well as being equivalent to having the effects of several high-quality spirit pills. Even Yan Qingwu, who was the #1 prodigy of the Xianxia sect, couldn't afford so many spirit pills. At this time, Yan Qingwu was completely unaware of her seniors' deaths. She had chosen to operate separately. It wasn't that she didn't trust her fellow Heavenly Fiend sect disciples, but she didn't want to share her finds either. While Lishewu believed in the strength of numbers and his charisma allowed him to attract followers as he promised to share the spoils of war, mostly gained from robbing other intrepid explorers of the ancient tomb, particularly those from the Orthodox sects. Yan Qingwu was an ice empress who believed in the total domination of others through pure strength. She didn't believe in relying on others, and lived by the principle that whatever she wanted, she would acquire using her own strength instead of numbers. Right now, Yan Qingwu was executing the Xianxia immortal body, which was the strongest cultivation technique of the Xianxia sect, one that the sect leader and patriarch, Li Tianzun, also known as Tianshatanzun, personally passed down to her. Li Tianzun was currently at the 8th level, and he was known for being nearly indestructible. Yan Qingwu was far from reaching such a stage, but thanks to using the effects of the Millennial Milkstone, she was able to attain the 2nd level of the Xianxia immortal body. She hadn't completed it yet, but once she had mastered that level, she would be impervious to many weapons, assuming the opponent was from her generation, of course. Unfortunately, she didn't get the chance to strive for completion of the 2nd level. She suddenly noticed a disturbance in the chi currents, and her eyes opened, unleashing 2 bright rays of light into the depths of the pool. Despite the obsidian pupils that resembled sparkling gemstones, there was a malicious glint akin to a demon flashing within those dark depths. Her eyes narrowed, almost becoming sharp blades that stabbed anyone bold enough to look into her eyes. Realizing that the disturbance of the chi currents in the pool was caused by another presence above her, Yan Qingwu's eyes flashed murderously. "I'll kill you." "Seriously, girl? Did the idea of sharing not occur to you? Even if you want to monopolize the damned Milkstone pool, do you really have to kill the other party?" Okay, I get that she was from the demonic sect, but even so, killing for the sake of it was just, not that it mattered, for I wasn't around to voice my complaints anyway. Even if I was, I doubted Yan Qingwu would pay me any heed. Pulling out a curved blade, she swam upward like a shark, a stealthy predator that ruled the dark depths of the sea. Ah, nice. In contrast to the psychotic Yan Qingwu, Zhu Jiao was enjoying himself immensely in the pool while he cultivated. Don't ask me how much he progressed, and if he had some abnormally high perception and willpower. I don't give a fuck. Just know that he got stronger in that short period of time that he spent soaking in the Milkstone pool. Okay? The Milkstone pool had intense effects that helped him accelerate his cultivation, or something to that effect. Don't ask me for the details. You know I'm the type who didn't buy into all these bullshit. Fortunately, before Qilin could launch into any sort of info dump explaining the intricacies of the Golden Kirin sect's martial arts, both he and Zhu Jiao sensed the murderous intent coming from below the pool. His eyes flying open, Zhu Jiao retreated in reflex. Splash! The pool erupted in a geyser of water as a curved blade burst through its swirling surface, resembling a black crescent moon. Yan Qingwu was stunned by her failure to kill Zhu Jiao in one strike. She had executed her cloud space movement to approach her target and launch the black lunar saber style, which should theoretically kill him instantly. But she failed. Evidently, she did not account for Zhu Jiao's plot armor and the protection he was entitled to as the protagonist. Can't blame her, though. This was clearly the first time that Yan Qingwu had failed. In the past, she had slain even the more fearsome of foes in her generation with a single blade. She hadn't needed her second blade unless it was one of the most formidable geniuses, which Zhu Jiao happened to be. the thought of failure never occurring to her. Yan Qingwu didn't have even a single strand of thiad to cover herself with. She had emerged in full frontal glory, displaying her completely naked body for Zhu Jiao to see. Zhu Jiao was completely taken aback, but he couldn't help but drop his jaw at the magnificent sight before him. His mind blanked out as he registered how incredibly beautiful Yan Qingwu was. Whether it was her face, her body, her hair, everything about her was almost perfect beauty. And being the healthy, growing young heterosexual man that he was, Zhu Jiao was unable to control his physiological responses. Confronted with the image of a gorgeous girl his age, his lower body reacted appropriately. Die! Realizing that she had been seen naked, Yan Qingwu's killing intent grew exponentially. She swung her black crescent saber once more, trying to cleave the offending Zhu Jiao in half. The blade streaked forward like lightning, sharp and ruthless. Whoa! Zhu Jiao cried out and stumbled backward to avoid her killing blow. Impressive! In contrast to the panicking Zhu Jiao, Qilin was rubbing his chin and musing thoughtfully to himself as he studied the fan service scene before him.
No doubt he was burning the images into his brain right now so that he could later recall and jack off or do whatever it was that Ghost did for pleasure. I didn't know if they still had that thing down there. After all, since they were missing their legs. Don't give me that. Zhu Jiao yelled at him, feeling numb from shock. Qilin ignored him and continued his assessment. This maiden is probably 17 years old at most, but look at how abnormally high her cultivation is. Not bad, given how she's at the first level of the pure spirit stage at such a young age, and without artificial qi too. I'm guessing that she's the legendary 6-star Constitution practitioner. Wow, this is quite the fateful encounter. What? Zhu Jiao cried out as he dodged another saber strike from the furious young maiden. His heart skipped a beat. 5-star Constitution practitioners were already prodigies among prodigies. So what was a 6-star Constitution? Practitioner? They were practically mythical existences, geniuses who only appeared in legends. Except that there was one real, living one, right before Zhu Jiao's eyes right now. Yan Qingwu continued her relentless assault, stepping forward to slash at Zhu Jiao again. This time, her blade was so fast that Zhu Jiao wasn't able to avoid her, even with his godlike reflexes. He desperately flailed about, his right hand striking the water and pushing himself backward. He shifted his body slightly to evade the blade, which was hurtling toward him at the speed of lightning. While still dodging, he then threw out his right hand and attempted to seize his opponent's weapon, especially since he had left his gauntlets on the other side of the pool and wouldn't be able to reach them in time. Yan Qingwu totally did not anticipate that. Having underestimated the speed of her opponent's reflexes, she immediately grabbed hold of her wrist to try and pry her saber out of Zhu Jiao's grip. However, Zhu Jiao stood firm and refused to relinquish his hold. Caught off guard by his superior physical strength, Yan Qingwu slipped and crashed straight into Zhu Jiao, the two of them drawing closer and tangling together. For a moment, both of their naked bodies were in complete physical contact with each other on an extremely intimate level. Yan Qingwu's well-developed breasts pressing against Zhu Jiao's chest, their abdomens colliding, and their legs entwining around each other. Worse, as their hips bumped, so did their nether regions, and Zhu Jiao's thick, hard member entered Yan Qingwu's moist, warm region, which had been dampened by spending so much time submerged within the pool. The both of them froze. Zhu Jiao could feel Yan Qingwu's soft, gentle folds wrapping around him, sucking at his member as if she didn't want to let go of him. Yan Qingwu could feel Zhu Jiao's hard thing inside her, throbbing and causing her insides to heat up even more. Penetration had happened, even unexpectedly, in the most insane of manner. Oh boy. Qilin was trying not to look, but his eyes were wide and staring at the entwined figures of the young man and woman from behind his fingers, which were leaving huge gaps in between, so that he could get a better view. As this was his first time, Zhu Jiao couldn't help but moan and shudder. Yan Qingwu tried to shift away, but because their bodies were tangled together, they moved in an unexpected manner that caused Zhu Jiao to surge deeper into her after what seemed like a brief withdrawal. Both of them moaned at the same time. and being inexperienced and confused, Zhu Jiao was caught off guard. Surrendering to the unexpected buildup of pleasure, Yan Qingwu's eyes widened when she felt something erupting inside her. White, sticky fluid that was so totally not the milkstone liquid filled up her womb. Zhu Jiao shuddered. Still locked inside her thanks to their calamitous struggle to disentangle that ended up backfiring. Sorry. There was a long, awkward silence as Zhu Jiao stared at her, his heart filling with dread. Yan Qingwu remained impassive for a few more moments, and then her eyes glowed. I'm going to kill you. It was only natural. Not only did Zhu Jiao take her virginity, he even came inside of her. There was no way Yan Qingwu could handle this sort of humiliation and shame. A horrifying qi burst out of Yan Qingwu's body, exploding within the pool and sending huge tidal waves into the air. Even though their limbs were initially locked together, the force was sufficient to finally separate them and send poor Zhu Jiao flying into the air. Ugh. Zhu Jiao threw up a huge mouthful of blood as he landed backward, but he somehow managed to right himself and land on the shore. However, his current injuries were the least of his worries right now. Zhu Jiao quickly scrambled to the edge where he had his gauntlets and grabbed hold of them, bracing for the ferocious conflict that was sure to follow. If you dare leave, I'll kill you. Yan Qingwu did not follow him out of the milkstone pool, but instead dove back into its milky depths. What the fuck, lady? Even if he stayed, you were going to kill him anyway. That was like the most pointless threat ever. By the way, while all this was going on and Zhu Jiao was enjoying his lucky Sukebe moment, I was busily fighting for my life against Yan Qingwu's seniors and fellow disciples from the Xianxia sect by myself. So you can see why I resented him so much. That bastard had all the luck while I suffered nothing but misfortune after misfortune. At least I got the treasures I needed and even got my hands on an azure lotus sword. But Zhu Jiao topped that off by surrendering his virginity to the most beautiful girl in the Xianxia sect and even taking her virginity too. And he came inside her, no less. While she was trying to kill him right now, no doubt she would mellow later and become part of his harem. It was all inevitable. Fucking lucky bastard. Anyway, Zhu Jiao realized that his future wife and harem member had just dove back into the pool to retrieve her clothes and get dressed. So he did the same. We should hurry and leave, Qilin warned him. That girl is too strong. Even though she's young and has yet to perfect her saber skills, you still would only have a 50% of winning, even if you go all out against her. That's exactly what I intend to do, snapping at his master. Zhu Jiao turned to leave as quickly as possible.